Hi everyone. I've seen a lot of talk in the forums about the MT as to whether or not it's going to make the AA and the TR obsolete. And I've thought a lot about this and how the MT's presence is going to change the roles of those other vehicles. And this is important because a lot of people right now are trying to decide whether or not if they should melt their TR or AA before getting an MT, or if for the time being they should just hold on to them. So I'm going to do my best to address those issues and see if I can attempt to either validate your concerns or inevitably try to put them to rest. So what is the Cyclone MT? The Cyclone MT is Tumbrel's newest addition to their lineup of open canopy all-terrain vehicles. The first and foremost thing about it is that it's an obvious hybrid of the TR and the AA. That's the same single size one gun as the TR that's been mounted onto the same 360-degree rotating turret. The only difference between the MT and the TR's weapon loadout is that the TR comes with a Gatling gun while the MT comes with a Series 9 longsword ballistic cannon. And if you don't like it, you can always change its default weapon for any other type of size 1 gun. It also comes equipped with 4 size 2 missiles, which are currently the same type that the AA has, but the MT has doubled the amount. Not only that, you're also going to be able to swap them out for any other size 2 missile. And I'm already looking into buying a 4-pack of Rattlers to replace its default payload with. I've always looked at the AA as being a 2-pump chump, because once it's fired off both of its missiles, its most effective offensive capability is essentially gone. You could work out some of the problems that the AA has by giving it at least 2 more missiles and then put the firing mechanism on a turret instead of the fixed positional launcher that it has, and the MT has both of these innovations already built into it. Not only that, the MT's missile pod can rotate upwards to get a better fix on an airborne target, which was something that I found to be almost next to impossible to do with the AA. And I can confirm that the rotational speed for the MT's turret isn't any different from the TR's. This was something that a number of people were worried about, and would be a weird thing for them to do since the turning speed for a vehicle's turret is adjustable in the options menu. So it'd be kind of silly to make the MT's default speed slower, which really wouldn't serve any purpose other than to annoyingly force you to have to go into the settings menu and manually speed it up. This next thing that I'm about to talk about has some conflicting information surrounding it, and I'm in the middle of trying to get it confirmed by a CIG rep. But the Q&A stated that the MT has the same armor as the TR and the AA. And I wish they would just instead straight up say that it has medium armor. Because based on some previous research that I did on the Cyclone series, the TR is the only one out of all of them that's supposed to have medium armor. The rest of them are all listed as having light armor. This includes the AA, which I double checked on this, and all the previous information about it confirmed that the AA is also supposed to have light armor. I kept looking into it, but I couldn't find anything official from CIG confirming that they had in fact at some point upgraded the AA's armor to medium. So I don't know if the statement that they made in the Q&A is just a mistake, which has happened plenty of times in the past, or that it's solid evidence that the AA at some point has officially had its armor upgraded. I've already talked to plenty of people who all think they have the answer to this, but so far not a single one of them could offer any solid evidence to back up their claims other than things that I've already found on my own. Talks about the MT did bring up some other interesting things, like the confirmation that the MT and all the other Cyclone variants are going to be given weapon racks. Which isn't too surprising since CIG reps have already stated that all the ships that have no internal space are going to be given some kind of external storage and a weapons rack. But on a personal note, it's still good to have that information specifically verified by the developers. The only things that the MT doesn't have that the AA does is the EMP burst and its countermeasures. I have to admit that the countermeasures are actually going to be very effective when it comes to avoiding incoming missile fire. Right now, countermeasures are like having a get-out-of-jail-free card when it comes to being hit by missiles. And I've also been holding on to the pipe dream that someday the AA is going to become a meta vehicle because of its EMP burst. Potentially, it could end up being one of the most effective ground-to-ground based attacks that you could use against a larger and more heavily armored vehicle like the Nova tank or the Ballista. It could essentially shut one of these vehicles down while your other forces riddle it with cannon fire. Of course, how effective it would be at doing this is going to be completely determined by the devs and how they decide to tune its abilities. So does the MT make the AA obsolete? On a surface level, you could say that unless some drastic changes are done to the AA, then the MT really does. But going forward, I don't think it's going to be that simple. And it's not that the MT is going to make the AA obsolete as much as it's going to alter what the AA's role in combat is going to be. Like for instance, the AA's concept artwork initially showed it firing its missiles at a saber, which admittedly would be a suicidally stupid thing to do. And that was way back when it originally only had a pair of size 1 missiles and the saber still had 4 shields and 3 power plants. But now I feel that the AA's current missile loadout could be adjusted to make it the perfect platform for taking out other ground-based vehicles. The locking on mechanism is still a good design for targeting anything that's low to the ground and in front of the Cyclone, meaning anything that's coming at you or any vehicle that you're pursuing. And not many vehicles have countermeasures, so each of its missile shots would end up being an insta-kill. And before you say it, I already know that there's a huge flaw in what I just proposed. And the flaw is that you can't lock onto a target with a size 2 missile unless it's at least 1,000 meters away. And having a clear line of sight on a vehicle that's roughly that far away or more is going to be next to impossible to get, especially for the length of time that it takes to lock onto it. The devs have already proposed a dumbfire option for the missiles, which I think is specifically intended to be their fix for this issue. But I'd propose that you change the AA's targeting system by pulling in its minimal firing range. This isn't so crazy of an idea. They've already made individual changes to other vehicles when it comes to firing missiles, like for instance the ballista can lock onto a target at a significantly faster speed than what a ship would if it was using the same size missile, and this is an intended feature. So the devs could alter any aspect of how a vehicle performs without having to make it a global change, and the ballista sets a precedence for them already having done so in the past to help facilitate specific types of gameplay for vehicles, in particular when it comes to them firing missiles. I'd even replace the size 2 missiles with 4 or even 8 size 1s, and the main reason why I do this is because having access to only 2 missiles per resupply seems severely limiting. The extra rockets could be fed up into the firing mechanism from the interior of the vehicle to replace spent missiles in rapid succession. I would even suggest going as far as allowing players to replace the missiles with rocket pods, which already does the same thing that they're suggesting that the dumbfire option is going to do, but it would give the vehicle a lot more ammunition to fire. All of these changes would make it an extremely effective heavy vehicle-to-vehicle combatant. It would breathe new life into it and give the AA a renewed sense of purpose. So far the G12 and the MT have completely replaced it when it comes to ground-to-air combat, so they might as well repurpose the AA to be a better ground-to-ground heavy fighter. It can also use its countermeasures to keep other vehicles around it safe from incoming missile fire from not only ships, but also vehicles like the G12, the Ballista, or the Nova, which also has missile firing capabilities. This makes the AA a good fast support vehicle to have around and a necessary addition to any convoy. And then there's the Emp Generator. That's going to be the thing which could potentially make this vehicle something that could be so annoying to have to deal with. The G12R also has an EMP device, but it literally has no armor to speak of, and it's not going to be a very effective combat vehicle. Admittedly, the AA's Emp Generator is currently as weak as a newborn kitten, but I've also seen its effective range and power rise and fall like the tides from build to build, so I doubt that it's going to stay this way. But the real main difference that separates the MT from the AA is that the AA is a solo-operated vehicle that can be completely run from the driver's seat, while the MT needs an additional gunner to work its weapon systems. So the AA is still going to be a better option for solo drivers, while the MT is going to be more of a social vehicle. So because of that, and its EMP generator, the countermeasures, and the dumbfire missile options, I think that the AA still has a role to play. And that role is to make it a more effective ground-to-ground based combatant that's going to be better at defending against other missile-wielding vehicles like the Nova, the Ballista, and the G12. So then, does that also make the TR obsolete? I'm going to have a harder time answering this one because the MT seems like it's an upgraded version of the TR in nearly every way. A number of people have theorized that the additional weight from those missiles was going to be used as a way to justify limiting the MT's turning radius and reducing its top speed, but it seems to move just as fast as the TR, AA, or the RN. Another concern that can be dismissed is about its turret movement being slow. Like I said before, it moves with the same speed and precision as the TRs. But honestly, those things seem like really minor issues to me, and none of them are game changers as far as I'm concerned, even if they did end up being true. The real issue is that the standalone price of the MT is higher than the TR, and I'm sure that the in-game price, meaning what you'd pay for it if you were buying it in-game using the in-game currency, is also going to be higher. So the bottom line here is that the cheaper version of the Cyclone is going to be cheaper, and maybe that's just going to have to be good enough. So if you can live without the missiles, then you could end up buying a lot more TRs than MTs, which would be especially handy if you were building a military force that was on a budget. Another concern that people had about the MT was that it wouldn't fit into the same kind of vehicles that the other Cyclones could. The TR's turret adds some height to it over the other Cyclones, and the missile pods adds even more height to it on top of that, but the devs have already stated that the MT can still fit inside of the Cuddy and any of the other vehicles that can transport a TR, so there's going to be no worries there. The only issue with those missile pods is they really make the MT look top heavy, and anyone who's driven a vehicle knows that they don't need any help when it comes to getting knocked over. So until they add some way to upright a downed vehicle, I could see the MT spending more time on its side than it does on its wheels. Luckily, they've recently added some additional gyroscopic abilities to the vehicles that make them want to roll onto their wheels instead of onto their side. And last and not least, is the MT worth it for the price? Well, it's definitely worth picking up the Warbond version of the MT, especially if you plan on doing any kind of ground-based combat. Right now, the Warbond price of the MT is the same as the standalone price for the TR, so if you could afford to get one, I'd say do it. It's like getting a TR with LTI and extra missiles for the same price. Well, that's going to be it for this video about the MT Cyclone. I'd like to thank everyone for watching, and an extra special thanks goes out to my patrons for supporting me. Thanks again, and take care.